Hello, I'm so happy to have you here in this chat room and this internet conversation. I'm Francisco Osorio from University of Chile. I'm a journal editor and very interested in your proposal. So may I please ask you to introduce yourself, please?
I'm Beth Popp Berman. I'm an associate professor of sociology at the University at Albany SUNY, and I am on the steering committee of SocArXiv.
Hi, I'm Philip Cohen. I'm a professor of sociology at the University of Maryland. Also on the steering committee, I guess like the first member of the steering committee of SocArXiv, and really happy to be here. So thanks for having us.
Thank you. May I start with you, Philip, please? From where social archives start, why this is the time for preprint service in social science?
Well, I think there is a growing consensus that we have problems with our scholarly communication, with our publication system. And there's a lot of disagreement about what are the most important problems and what are the most important solutions, or the most pressing or feasible solutions, or what the appropriate scale of approaches to the problems that we have. But if the problems include high cost, lack of access and visibility, opaque processes of review, sort of obsession with status symbols that may or may not be correlated with quality. These are some of the problems that we've identified. Long delays in publication. A lot of people agree on some combination of those problems, and a paper archive, a research archive, is something that chips away at all of those problems to one degree or another. So it's a way to disseminate research rapidly, to find the right audience, the people who want to read your work now. It's open. SocArXiv anyway is open source and open access and free because of the grant support that our technology partner, the Center for Open Science, has. So it's a great first step for us to take in the direction of repairing our system of scholarly communication.
Yeah, just add to that. I mean, I think from my perspective, a lot of the initial conversation was about the slowness of the journal process and the fact that it's taking people years to get their completed research into journals and more broadly accessible. And even at that point, because there's so many paywalls around, it's not necessarily still accessible to a wide range of people, only to people with the right kind of academic access. And so having a preprint server kind of helps speed that process up. It doesn't address the peer review question so directly, although it has the potential to do that depending on what's built into the system. And there's a lot of possibilities for different kinds of options at this point. And I think it also speaks to this larger conversation that's been happening across the social sciences about how do we think about validity and replicability and making our research more open and kind of more of an ongoing process rather than something that just sort of goes out there for one moment in time and then nobody knows what's really going on behind the curtains.
Please let me, Beth, continue with you in the second question. What is the relationship between SocArXiv and journals as we know them today?
I'm curious to hear what Philip was going to say to this, but I mean, from my perspective, the immediate relationship, I don't think it's immediately that much of a challenge to the existing journal system because it's basically a way of taking research that's going to be published in traditional journals anyway and opening it up by getting it out, a version of it out there earlier and making it more accessible to people who maybe don't have access to the journals because they're behind a paywall. And so there's a part of it that doesn't have to be a very active challenge to the existing journal system. I mean, in the long run, I think it does have the potential to provide other kinds of challenges to journals because it does have the possibility of building in various kinds of peer review options. And that's something that the steering committee is going to be talking about is what are the different possibilities for thinking about adding those kinds of functions within the context of SocArXiv. So whether that's having individuals who are responsible for sort of collating particular groups of research in a particular area, so that maybe you've got a working paper series where there's just sort of editorial supervision but not formal peer review, or something that looks like more traditional peer review, Or there's also the option of just putting research out there and having it available for other people to comment on. So it's not formally peer reviewed, but there's a commenting option, and other scholars can add to or critique or react to papers that are online. So I think in the short run, not a radical challenge. In the long run, it has the potential to be a little more, be a little bit of a stronger alternative to the existing system.
Thank you. Philip, please.
A little bit more disruptive, I think, is the word they would say, right? Yeah, I think that question of the challenge or not to the existing system is really important. We can't sort of offer a standalone alternative to an existing system which has decades of inertia and huge, very large, very powerful actors, careers that are built on the way of operating that we have now, and so on. So we couldn't sort of put up an alternative and tell people to abandon their careers as they know them and come over here and try this other thing. We're not ready to do that. We don't have an alternative exactly to propose. But I think it's really important to begin our consideration of alternatives around the construction of infrastructure that has some core principles. That's nonprofit and open source and open access, and offers the potential to build on it in many different directions. And like Beth says, we can do everything from here's a place to put your paper and show your friends, to here's a place to organize an informal working group. Here's a place to put up a working paper series or a curated list, all the way to here's building a journal. Here's building a journal with open peer review. Here's inline commenting. Here's replication, which is linked to the documents, and the things that can expand offer great potential. In ways that can be extremely disruptive, in the sense of, like Beth says, the idea of our social science producing a paper, which is the moment of research, is an artifact of the technology of a long time ago. If we think of research much more as an ongoing process with different points of engagement, different opportunities for feedback and dialogue and collaboration, those things can happen much earlier in the process than they happen now, and we can really we can start working on those upgrades to our research process without taking down the existing system.
Let me continue with you, please. Why social scientists should participate in SocArXiv? What's your invitation?
Well, I think there's a very important moment here, and Beth and I are both sociologists, and this is a big conversation in sociology, but I know it's happening in other disciplines as well, where social scientists are looking for ways to increase their engagement with the public, with the media, with the political process, with policy makers, with students, and there's an unfortunate disconnect often between our research and our engagement work, where we produce our research and the research is out there, and then as a separate activity we try to embark on some engagement project, like writing op-eds or blogs or joining organizations and so on. And I think one thing that we would offer to social scientists is to bring those two things back together and play to your strength and say, you're a researcher, you're an expert on what you know, and the work that you do as a researcher does not have to be a separate project from the work that you do in your search for engagement with wider publics. And so, with a more rapid and open dissemination of research, that's a great opportunity to sort of do that and put your best foot forward. So that's one thing that we really offer to researchers to consider, is who are trying to reach a broader audience. And the one other suggestion, I'm sure Beth has others, is to work sooner and more open to overcome our fear of being wrong, our fear of being scooped, our fear of doing something which doesn't receive appropriate credit, and realize that turning our research outward has the potential to identify collaborators earlier, identify errors earlier, field test our work, allow people to replicating and challenging us at an earlier stage in the process when the stakes are lower in a way to improve the final product. And so that's a way of reorienting our research careers, which is really a challenge, and we invite people to consider it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the main thing that I would add to that is that clearly there's a lot of interest among academics, certainly in getting their research out to a broader public, but also just to disseminating it within the academic community and sort of trying to make sure that other people in your discipline and adjacent disciplines kind of know what you're doing and have access to it. And I think we're at this moment where there are a lot of people, especially younger scholars, who are doing that by putting their research onto sites like Academia or like ResearchGate. And those are, do make research available to a closed community of people, but they're privately owned. ResearchGate was bought by Elsevier not so long ago. There are a lot of questions about what those are going to look like in the future, and we're sort of buying into this. If that's the route we go, we're buying into this infrastructure that is based on, that relies on companies that don't really have the interests of open science and kind of building a community of knowledge in mind. And so I think in addition to just sort of encouraging people to pursue their own interest in terms of, you want to be able to get your research out there and have people read it and have it be as accessible as possible, it's also worth investing in doing that within the context of an infrastructure that's going to be open and that is committed to this ideal of open access and dissemination, and that isn't down the road going to end up having to figure out somehow how to monetize all these page views that they've got to in order to kind of satisfy venture capitalists. That's kind of got the interest of the social scientific or the academic community in mind more generally.
Oh, many thanks. Philip, can I close with some final words from you?
Well, thank you for having us, and I think I'm really excited to have this opportunity. I want to also mention for our international viewers, SocArXiv and the server that it's on at the Center for Open Science accepts work in many languages. We will eventually need volunteer moderators to review work that comes in every language that people want to submit in. So we hope we can build a base of people who are engaged community members who will volunteer some of their time, will take some of that time that they may be now voluntarily giving to a for-profit company like Elsevier or others, and redirect that same energy and that same effort to building open alternatives for the future of publishing. And so I think it's an exciting time for us, and with the technology we have an exciting range of options, and I'm just happy to be doing this, and I'm grateful for this interview.
For now, thank you very much, and see you in the near future.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.